Okay, great. Well, then I think Forrest has a few kind words to say to tee up our presenters, so I'll turn it over to Forrest.
Hi, I'm Forrest. So I met Mary at a Day-to-Days event that Smart Chicago was pulling together with the help of the MacArthur Nation and some other folks about a month ago. And we were on a panel that was talking about how to get data that's not open data. So I was there talking about scraping, and Maryam was there talking about FOIA, and it was clear that she knew a lot about FOIA. And but it was also kind of clear that she didn't know a lot about like this community, and it seemed like that was something that which should be remedied. Because she works for this really interesting organization out in Elmhurst called the Citizen Advocacy Center that, among a variety of things, helps people navigate and execute on their rights under the FOIA Act of Illinois, getting data out of oftentimes quite recalcitrant public bodies. So just a little bit about CACs is that they've been around since 1994. Maryam joined in 2009 and she became the ED Executive Director in 2013. One of the reasons why I thought it would be quite interesting to have her come is because she could explain what the CAC is, because I think it's actually kind of it's a model of kind of a kind of nonprofit advocacy law firm that I'm not actually all that familiar with, and so I was hoping you could say a little bit in your larger presentation about what the CAC is as a model and what a community lawyer is as well. I think that one of the things that might hope to come out of this connection is that there is much of the work that we kind of often do is just how to get access to the data that is often kind of quasi or semi-public, and I think we had a little bit of a conversation, and Maryam was quite surprised that that in the opinion of some of our public bodies that it is illegal to scrape public websites, So I think that and other kind of conversations I think could really, could be really useful, a useful kind of set of ideas to start to share. So thank you. All right.
Thank you so much for coming to Open Data Hack Night. OpenGov Hack Night in Chicago, and for spending some time listening to me talk about Citizen Advocacy Center and what we do and how our clients and how we use data. I'll talk for just about 10 minutes to give you a little bit of background in what we do, 5 minutes about what we do probably, and then a little bit about the data, 5 more minutes about the data. So Citizen Advocacy Center, we're in Elmhurst. It's about 15 miles west of Chicago. But as attorneys, we're licensed in Illinois, so we help people throughout Illinois. What do we help them with? Well, our mission is to build democracy in the 21st century. So we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, but we kind of have this political angle because we're working in the field of American democracy. And the way that we try to build democracy in the 21st century is by focusing particularly on public participation in the government public policy decision-making process. It's a mouthful. But essentially, in our American democracy, we know that we've got the 3 branches of government. We also have the 4th estate, which hopefully isn't dwindling away, as recent news might indicate. But we also have citizens, right, that we count on to participate in democracy. Maybe some of our public servants count on people not participating that much in our democracy, but for the most part, we embrace the idea that, or that we think that public bodies should be embracing the ideas that people in their communities have an expertise to share with the public body when it comes to making decisions, particularly in this highly specialized and technical world that we live in today. So how do we execute our mission? How do we get people involved? Well, we have all different kinds of clients, first of all. So folks who are like Joe and Jane Citizen, who are interested in solving some issue that they've identified in their backyard or in their community or in their county, some issue of public concern that they'd like to help solve that issue, or maybe they've got some information to add to the equation, or they want to be part of the process because they're going to be directly impacted by whatever decision is being made. They usually come to us when they make their contact with the Citizen Advocacy Center because there's some barrier in the public participation process, some barrier in the laws. It could be Freedom of Information Act, like Forrest was mentioning before, but it might be the Open Meetings Act, another one of our sunshine laws. It could be the First Amendment, which is really the backbone for public participation in our American democracy. And certainly it could be something under the election code, some kind of challenge to ballot access and keeping people from being part of the process and participating in our democracy. So we will help Joe and Jane Citizen. Journalists certainly contact us to vet issues, for quotes, to understand certain issues. Educators contact us because a lot of the work that we do is civic education. It might be formal in a school setting or in a group setting like this, but we do a lot of one-on-one education with these Joe and Jane Citizen folks who contact us because they never had a civics course in high school and they don't know that there are 3 levels of government and that local government helps solve things like potholes, but the federal government doesn't. Things like that. So civic education is a huge part of what we do, and educators avail themselves of a lot of free resources that we have on our website, lesson plans under the broad under the broad umbrella of democracy. We have almost 50 lesson plans on different topics, and we have a lot of citizen guides or brochures, if you will, on different topics that are relevant in Illinois particularly, again under that broad umbrella of democracy. We also try to affect public policy, and the way that we do that is by gathering information from our clients, because they're the ones who are out in the field as citizen watchdogs, trying to monitor their local governments, trying to solve that problem that they've identified in their backyard. And they are really the eyes and ears in our community. And by virtue of being in Elmhurst, we tend to help people in the Collier County area the most. So DuPage County, Kane, Will, McHenry, and which one am I forgetting? Kane County. And certainly suburban Cook County as well. So Chicago proper, we don't get too many inquiries because there are other resources, but sometimes folks from Chicago proper do contact us as well. And we certainly work on issues that impact Chicago because we work on issues that impact Illinois. So public policy advocacy is something that we work with in coalition with other organizations like David Melton's organization here with ICPR. What else? We also will litigate if necessary. Lately, because the Public Access Counselor's Office in the Attorney General's office, which is an office that gets to interpret our Freedom of Information Act and our Open Meetings Act laws as a parallel administrative process to like a circuit court hearing if someone had an issue with trying to get public records from a government body, or if someone had problems entering an open meeting of a government body, that office is poised to help resolve an issue. So we will help individuals navigate that administrative appeal process, and in addition assist them with any kind of pro se litigation that they might be pursuing, trying to get a public body to be accountable.
What's a pro se litigation?
Pro se litigation is where an individual decides to go to court by themselves, like to represent themselves, basically. So in a Freedom of Information Act case, it's really simple because the presumption is that all records are government records that evidence business activity of the government, that those are government records, and the onus is on the public body to show with clear and convincing evidence that some exception applies to keep that record from your view. The records are your records, you have a right to see them, and that is a huge way that we assist our clientele, is through assisting them through navigating the FOIA process. How do you ask for records? What is the right like wording that you should use in a Freedom of Information Act request? How should things be phrased so that the chances that you'll get the records are higher than not? Because there is an art to it as well as a science. So there is the science, but we know a little bit more of the art, I suppose. So people will contact us to help them craft those and also craft arguments to convince the public access counselor if it gets to that level where records are withheld and they want to appeal that to that administrative agency. So one thing I just wanted to mention about open data that I know was true last year, and I don't know if this has changed very much in this last year, but one of the critiques from a good government perspective is that a lot of the open data out there has a lot to do with services that governments provide, which is terrific because people need to be aware of the services that government provides. But also, so in other words, there isn't as much information about accountability, I think, like measures like internal to the government process that will hold government accountable. And the other critique about the open data movement that existed at least last year, and I don't think it's changed very much this year, is that governments will make available those data sets that are not controversial or that, you know, they're willing to give up because they don't think that there's going to be any kind of controversy that might arise from anybody utilizing that data to demonstrate whatever they want to demonstrate. And what we help people with is finding that data that the governments don't want to give up. I mean, that's where the problems arise, and that's where people contact us to figure out, well, I know that this public body is being really obtuse about interpreting the FOIA Act, and they're being very recalcitrant about giving up this data, and you know, what can we do to force their hand? And there are ways. Sometimes there are ways to force their hand. Sometimes people have to take it to court, because even a public access counselor decision from the Attorney General's office might not be enough, because unfortunately those decisions are only binding if she terms them as binding and she writes them within 60 days of receiving the FOIA request. And I'm getting a little bit in the weeds here, but some of this information.
Is Lisa Madigan in this case?
Sarah Pratt is the public access counselor, but Lisa Madigan's the one who signs off on binding opinions. But a 60-day time frame to decide some of the hard issues is not a very large time frame for them to vet, to do the research on the issue, to get the information that they need from the respective parties, usually the public body, and then write a draft that then gets vetted through the many-level process that they go through before Lisa Madigan signs off on it. So unfortunately, there aren't a lot of binding opinions to give guidance to how people can get access to records, but there is a small cache of case law that helps us figure out in these hard cases, like what records should be divulged to the public and what shouldn't. So I thought I'd spend some time telling you all about some of the projects that we've done that have used data to give you, like, to illustrate to you not only what kind of data isn't as easy to showcase in a data set, but also this hard kind of data to come by that might be of interest to people who are interested in keeping government accountable. So one example from 2009 is, and this is just a prop to show you that we did this project where we were comparing sunshine statutes in 5 Midwestern states. Now, that's not very easy necessarily to capture through a data set unless you have like terms in the different provisions, the different statutes in the different states. And so, we had to painstakingly go through the respective statutes in Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Ohio, and Iowa, I believe, or Minnesota, to compare and to basically come up with best practices or where's room for reform to make stronger those tools and institutions that support public participation in the government decision-making process. And the good news is, as a result of this research, Lisa Madigan's office was a supporter of a large coalition of good government groups that, including Citizen Advocacy Center, that helped rewrite the Freedom of Information Act in Illinois and took it from being one of the weakest laws in the country to being one of the strongest laws in the country, because now we have some more teeth in the law, short of taking someone to court, which costs money, which is the Public Access Counselor's Office. So here's an example of where I don't know what the data community can do to help people in the legal community compare statutes in different states when the statutes have sometimes different terms that they use. I mean, that's one issue with comparing statutes, is that the terms aren't always the same. Another example that I thought I'd bring, and this one was from 2010, and just to show you, like, here's like an easy one, because we were given data from the U.S. Census Bureau, because they collect data every year, even though they do a census once every 10 years. They collect the American Community Survey every year from a random sample from different areas of the states and on different topics, and they do it on civic engagement indicators. And so we were given a grant to analyze all that data and do a lot of statistics and figure out, what's the status of Illinois civic health. So that was easy. The government gave us the data. We like that. Right now we're working with the Public Access Counselor's Office to actually take all the data from all of the decisions that they've made since they've gotten enforcement power in 2010 and take that data and put it in a working document that journalists can use, because we're working with the Chicago Headline Club to get this on the finished. It's very time consuming, because those cases have a lot of those opinions have a lot of different parameters that need to be captured in the spreadsheet. Again, not very easy, very time consuming. Would love to have some kind of program that could just really trim it along. Although I do know that there is some like some PDF software that will read PDFs and help like pull out stuff, and maybe that's something that could help with the statute. For folks that want to compare statutes, but I don't know how to use that or where I would even access that. But
is that Tabula you're talking about?
I don't know what it is. Is it Tabula?
Yeah, you upload a PDF and you can kind of extract. Like,
I was told like the journalists had access to it, but like
it's
regular
free for
people.
anybody.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, I need to learn how to use that in my free time when I come up with some free time. So again, here's another example in this DCBA brief, this legal brief from DuPage County. We published a law article where we analyzed all the different statutes in all 50 states that bear on economic development and how the states treat records pursuant to economic development decisions. And those are really hard records to get, because businesses and corporations don't want to let give anything in the public eye for confidentiality reasons. And I have a lot of questions about what's properly confidential and what's being like stretched to the limit.
This is when the state of Illinois makes a deal with a large manufacturer to give them a tax break for 20 years if they site the facility in a particular place.
Those are aspects of it, yes. Aspects of these economic development deals do include basically these corporate welfare or corporate incentives, I guess, to stay in the U.S. and depending on in Illinois, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, certainly that's part of the process for some of these economic development projects that go through. But there's other aspects as well. And the issue in this article that we were looking at was this trend towards municipalities and counties utilizing nonprofit economic development corporations to make land use decisions, and those land use decisions are being made outside of the public eye because of this nonprofit that's not privy to FOIA is not applicable to them.
Like McPeer?
That's an example, yes.
The people who run the McCormick Center.
Yep.
And maybe
there's like hundreds of examples. Right. So that is one example. In DuPage County, it's the DuPage County. It's DuPage. Choose DuPage. In Chicago, you also have World Business, and then you also have like the Chicago Infrastructure Trust, and so there's all these like nonprofit entities that are doing government work or traditional government functions, and it's difficult to get access to that data. So in here we were looking at, what are the best practices across the country as evidenced by their statute and from their case law, and lo and behold, New Jersey, they had a pretty good statute. So we make a case for becoming the next New Jersey, but of course, with a scandal with the governor there and the Port Authority, I don't know then how well the statutes are working over there. But anyway, and then another way that we use the data is through FOIA. So sometimes our organization also uses FOIA to get access to information to write a policy report. And these policy reports are often funded by foundations, so it's not like we want to do them, even though we see, we want to do them, but they reveal themselves through the work that we do with our clients, and then funders are interested in seeing, well, where are the best practices in these arenas where we've seen that there's time and time again we see problems where clients are not able to participate in the government public policy decision-making process because they're shut out of the process, or they can't get access to the documents that they need to be informed and to effectively and efficiently impact that process. So in this law review article, we were looking at electoral board decisions. So what is a local electoral board, you might ask? Some of you might remember more recently with the Yes for Independent Maps campaign and the local electoral board at the state board of elections had to, they basically heard the challenge that Mike Casper was the attorney for the challengers, brought before the Yes for Independent Maps folks to basically say, you haven't met the requisite requirements for getting on the ballot, we're giving you the boot. Well, that's the electoral board. That happens to be the state electoral board. There are hundreds of electoral boards in Illinois. So every municipality has an electoral board, every county has an electoral board, townships have electoral boards, and we basically decided to look at 20 years worth of electoral board decisions and basically the case files for all challenges to all ballots in municipal ballots in DuPage County municipalities and suburban Cook municipalities. So it came out to something like, I want to say like 140 municipalities roughly. So we wanted to find 20 years and to see like how are these local electoral boards deciding the outcomes in these cases where people want to either get on the ballot to run as a candidate or they want to put a question for referendum on the ballot. And so, and what's the strikeout rate, and why are people striking out? Is it for legitimate reasons, or is it for perhaps what might be deemed as political reasons, and the people who were defending the ballots weren't savvy enough to know how to defend against certain objections? Some of that requires a lot of inferences, so inferences that we couldn't really make. But the really astounding thing about this report was that the local electoral boards routinely destroy the opinions that they write. And so there is no record of how they've decided. Not in the city of Chicago, and not with the Cook County, the clerk of Cook County who runs the elections here. You all in Chicago and in Cook County, all of your electoral board decisions are online because you all are very sophisticated. And I would like to see DuPage County, at least, if not the other counties, do the same. But certainly the municipalities, it's important for the municipalities as well to publish their decisions. And the reason why that's important is because people have a right to know what to expect, basically, when they go before their local electoral board. And without this precedent that is maybe doesn't, these local electoral board decisions set a precedent that are lost because they're being destroyed, essentially. I will say no more. So the data here, again, not very clean data that you can like easily find in a spreadsheet or whatever. We had to create our own spreadsheets to lift all the particular information from these local electoral board decisions to actually tally what objections were being made, which ones were sustained, which ones weren't sustained, yada, yada, yada. So everything we do is a little bit more difficult than we would hope. And that is the beauty of monitoring government from this perspective, from the perspective of trying to get access to data that the government doesn't want to divulge. Any questions? Yes.
I thought it was interesting what you described as the bar for the government keeping something private seems quite high. What are some of the things that were sort of things that you had trouble getting out? Like, what are some of the more interesting challenges that you've had to make?
Well, there's lots of ways of looking at that question. So it's interesting to me when I have to argue to a public body that they have to release a contract. And why is that interesting to me? Because that's a quintessential public document.
Right.
And why are we even arguing that this contract should be, okay, so that's really interesting to me. On the other end of the spectrum, there are some overused exceptions. So Illinois' FOIA unfortunately has a large number of exceptions, and then that didn't change from the former FOIA iteration to the current one that went into effect 2010. And a couple of them are, I would say, abused. And one of those are the preliminary document. And I think you even made a comment about this, David Melton, you were quoted in an article recently about this, and it's so true. Essentially, preliminary documents, the 7.1F exception, is applied to all of these consultants that are hired for tens of thousands of dollars to write reports, and then if the public body doesn't want anyone to see that report, they can claim it's a preliminary draft, never cite it ever, the chair of the public body will never cite to it in an open meeting, which would, if they did, that would immediately make it a public record. That has to be divulged, not one that is subject to an exception. And so, to me, it's always interesting to see where that exception is being used because it's so overbroad. I was very surprised to see that 20 years worth of local electoral board opinions we couldn't find them. And of the ones that we were able to find, we found inconsistencies amongst the decisions and how they may have treated like the misspelling of an address in the header or something like that, something minute. The treatment of that depending on who the candidate was, I don't know, or depending on what the referendum was. And sometimes even within the same local electoral board. And because we didn't have 20 years worth of records, you can pretty much count on the fact that it was the same members deciding those two cases. So that's interesting to me. Any other questions about Citizen Advocacy Center? I threw a lot in there, and there's so much to share with you all. And I just wanted to give you, I guess, to scrape the surface, so to speak, of this world of data that we live in. Yes, Forrest?
So 2 questions. One is that many of us are running into problems getting public records out of our public bodies. How can we engage you guys and see if you guys, if you guys can help? That's A. And then B. You've described enormous amounts of effort that your organization has gone through over the years in building up very interesting data sets. You think that maybe there's no way to access those data sets currently on your website?
Some of them are on our website. Okay. These 2 are on our website. No, all of this should be on our website.
Not the reports, but the
oh, the spreadsheets.
So we don't have to go through into spreadsheets.
That's an excellent point. I will take that back to the
I'm sure that there are people in this room that if this data was on a spreadsheet, they would be they might do some very interesting things with it.
Part of the problem with some of the more difficult stuff to assess is that you annotate everything,
Sure.
and you've got, so some of it wouldn't be useful online, but there's certainly some data that it would be useful for us to put online. So I will go back to the office and do
Okay,
that.
so how can we,
How can you all help us?
or how can you help us? Either both.
Well, one way that we can help people like you all who might be interested in solving government problems is, I guess, from the perspective of government accountability and government, accountability, essentially. What kind of questions can be answered with data sets that may be already available or not? And identify those data sets that aren't yet available and advocate for getting them available, making them available. Again, this is always government data that we're talking about. That's what we're dealing with on a routine basis, because it's always people trying to get data from their government bodies to solve issues of public concern in their backyard. So that's one idea. Another idea might be I guess, I don't know, I'm not really sure if there's a role for, I guess, pro bono services, or like a team, like a pro bono tech team or something like that, to help an organization organize certain data. And I'm just throwing this out of my, like pulling this out of my ears or out of my head. Yes, David.
What about putting together a coalition of reform groups that are willing to help open data people with Freedom of Information Act requests and result in litigation?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, we're always available to help reporters, data, open data folks with Freedom of Information Act requests. And that's what we exist for, is to help folks navigate the government decision-making process, and that includes getting the information that you need to advocate for whatever position it is on whatever issue it is that you care about. Because if you can't get the information, then you're just, your voice out there, like, what, quack, 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 and not saying anything. We need some information to work from. Yes.
So we have people from the city here, and the city and the county here have made a lot of progress in posting data and making it publicly available through data portals and stuff. What is the status of play on the comparable kinds of things in, say, colonial counties?
I don't think there is anything comparable to the city's data sets that they're through the OpenGov movement. I don't think there is anything that's comparable to that. And it should be. I mean, the northeastern part of Illinois is the most heavily populated part of Illinois, so everyone should be clamoring for the information in this area for sure.
Is there a way, if you're helping someone navigate one of these issues, or freedom of information or litigation, where other people can kind of like follow along? Is there a public place where it's like, oh, I really care about, I don't know, potholes, let's say, and I want to follow that issue and then receive updates continually? And then you can start to see, okay, here's X hundred people care about this in this community.
So we don't get folks who are calling us about potholes.
Well,
I know that's an example. I know that's an example, but it's more like a lot of the folks that come to us are concerned about economic development and land use issues. For the most part, that's what they're talking out about.
If this park or this parking lot's going to be used for something,
Yeah.
I care, but I'm really busy, but I need to follow and I want to follow, and I'm going to forget to follow. So you could create kind of like an email update for that specific issue that people.
That's true, and that's what a lot of our clients will do, especially for areas that don't have the media attention. Or any media outlet. They will create a blog, and they're like doing citizen journalism, and it's a one-stop shop for people in the community to look to see how is this project moving along or not moving along, as the case might be, and what's happening at the meetings routinely, and like what's the story that like a traditional paper might not cover, but like what's really happening, what comments are being made. So they're usually juicier than like a print publication. So that's happening to a certain extent. I can't imagine how to make it more formal.
Okay. Just a simple.
Just because there's so many. I mean, you just never know what people are interested in. You just never know. It could be like the sidewalk on their own street. It could be, the mosque going up across the, across town or across the county. Who knows? So, and the other thing that people come to us about are government budget issues. So, governments, it would be terrific if governments made their budgets more available online, and if they were more uniform, so that would be easier to compare between budgets. So, because our folks are also looking for fraud, and just monitoring resources to make sure that governments are using them efficiently.
There's a company called OpenGov.com that does that. It creates a standardized approach that's easily accessible, and it's really awesome.
Yeah, but the government has to pay for it, so they have to want it.
And have to approve of anything that gets published.
One of the things that is a little bit, just while I'm up here, is alarming to me about the trend of putting everything online is that under our FOIA Act, people do have a right to inspect the original document. So you can go and ask to see the original document that might be written on, that might not show up in the electronic document. And any effort that's made to allow a public body to say, well, it's online, so I don't need to furnish the record to you if you ask for it in a different format, like in person, really is a disservice to the people. Certainly a lot of people are going to say, oh, great, it's online, terrific. I'm going to go get the information online. But you got some people, A, don't have access to broadband, or they don't have access at all to a computer, or they don't have a cell phone or what have you. And then again, some people don't know how to use it. So there's a built-in barrier there. And then also there's issue of, and I would argue that the appellate court in Illinois has said in the case that people have a right to inspect the original document. Any other questions?
Well, can you hang out a little bit afterward in case people want to?
Yeah, sure. And I brought my card, so if people want to call us at the center, you're more than welcome to ask questions, to follow up on anything. Please do.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.